MeMonster.
Chapter 311. Ceres Argentine opened her eyes. A sky shrouded in thick mist stretched endlessly above. Before her, a field faded to lifeless gray, drained of all color and hope. The moment Ceres saw the woman collapsed in that field, she knew this was a dream. The same nightmare that always returned when her condition worsened. Here again, huh? A bitter smile crept onto her lips. Once the nightmare began, there was no stopping it. All she could do was endure it to the end. Cough. The woman coughed violently, each spasm sending blood surging up to stain her chest. Her leather armor was torn and frayed beyond recognition. What had once been pristine blonde hair and fair skin was now smeared with blood and grime. That woman was Ceres herself, or rather, the Ceres from before she formed a contract with the goddess. The land of mist, just before the fall of Niflheim. A phlegmy, wheezing laugh echoed through the mist. Standing before her collapsed self was a man. His body was covered in tattoos, his skin an ashen gray, and horns curved from both sides of his forehead. A white Oni. The rulers who had dominated all of Niflheim, far superior to humans in strength and savagery, and breeding like vermin. They had spread across the continent until they ruled every race. Humans here were nothing more than the ruled. No, less than that. Livestock. The primary diet of the white Oni was human flesh. You thought someone like you could beat me? The horned man stomped on the sword, lying in the grass. A battered iron blade Ceres had spent years to obtain. Crunch. With a single step, the blade snapped clean in two. You humans are weak, stupid, slow. You don't even know what honor is. You're just living trash, maggots born to die at our feet. Back then, Ceres couldn't refute a word. She just stared up at the man with trembling eyes. That man, he was her father's killer. He'd murdered him for no reason other than boredom, ripped him apart. Ceres had tried to take advantage of the chaos when a horde of unknown monsters invaded her village to get revenge. But she failed. So what? The fragments invade and the world's ending and you can't tell left from right anymore? Revenge? The man kicked the woman. She coughed up blood as she rolled across the ground. That sword play. What the hell was that? Trying to act like a knight? How pathetic. All that came out of her mouth were ragged gasps. The man stuck out a tongue like a serpent's and drew a dagger. Well then, let's begin the dissection. Let me hear those sweet screams. I never kill my prey quickly. I once filleted a guy 10,000 times before he finally died. The blade's sharp edge grazed her thigh. Terror overtook her eyes. Let's start with these soft thighs, then the calves, then your ass. While you scream, I'll savor the fresh meat still warm. The knife pressed into her thigh, just enough to break the skin, and just as it began to slice into flesh... Stop! She opened her mouth in a trembling plea. What was that? Please, stop! I was wrong. Not the right tone. I was wrong. Tears streamed down her cheeks. So you were all ready to kill me, and now you're begging for mercy? The moment word gets out that a human dares raise a weapon against us, your village will be wiped out. I'm sorry. I was blind. It was a mistake. Begging for your life from your father's killer? Watching her past self, Saris closed her eyes. And still, the nightmare pressed on. Say it again. What? Please, spare me. You call that begging? On your knees. She hastily adjusted her posture and knelt. Her knees scraped on sharp stones, drawing blood, but she didn't flinch. Prostrate livestock. Puh! The woman threw herself flat on the ground. The man smiled with satisfaction and placed his foot on her disheveled blonde hair. Revenge for your father? What, were you trying to play knight? That's not it. You humans have no honor, no advanced civilization, no gods to worship. If we say die, you die. If we say live, you live. You're pigs, trash no better than insects. And yet, one of those insects dared to touch me. The man stomped on the woman's head. She trembled, unable to move. I've decided, human. I'll offer you to our goddess as a sacrifice. She's in need of a fresh, human heart. No. Don't worry. Once I tear it out, you'll die quickly. Despair flooded her eyes. How pathetic. Watching her former self, Saris bit her lip. That woman had failed her revenge, and consumed by fear, surrendered. No honor. Of course she didn't. Humans here received no education. They were raised like cattle, to be devoured by the white oni, sometimes for food, sometimes for fun, sometimes as meat shields in territorial skirmishes. Niflheim. A land with no hope. The continent she'd lived on was shrouded in thick mist year-round, visibility nearly non-existent. More than half the year was winter, and the weather was relentlessly bleak. A living hell.
Humans here were born only to die. She didn't know what friendship meant, what love meant, what it felt like to have comrades, what it even meant to be alive. She didn't understand any of it. She was nothing more than livestock. The man had been right. Saris's revenge was nothing but a hollow imitation. Her father used to tell her stories of knights. Knights were gallant, honorable, beautiful in those tales. Enchanted by them, Saris had orchestrated a childish revenge plot. Please, please!
Ha 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 ha!
The man dragged Saris off, her body limp. Their destination, the temple of the twin goddesses not far from the field. There he would offer her as a living sacrifice. Your heart will please the goddess. Be honored. Not everyone gets the chance. You'll be paving the way for our great race's future. I said we don't need a sacrifice. The man's foot halted. Not far away, a young girl was looking down at him.
Who's this piglet?
So humans here are called piglets now. There was a time this place rivaled the top ranks of Mobius. Even the eternal land of flame, Niflheim, has fallen into pathetic decline. The girl gave a thin smirk, then walked up to the man. The man's eyes bulged, veins throbbing as he stared.
You trying to die?
Your eyeballs. Keep them if you don't want to die. A sinister light gleamed in the girl's eyes. The man, still standing, suddenly trembled violently, then collapsed flat before her. Don't tell me! Lady Hela? Was that my name here? Yes, goddess. What brings you to such a humble place? I'll keep it simple. Your world is on the verge of collapse. Within a week at most, the harvesters will descend upon the continent. You won't stop them. Your military power is trash. You're not even united. In short, your world is garbage. What are you saying? Didn't you hear the oracle? If you wanted to restore your world, you should have made a contract with me. Wasn't that the job of your so-called heroes?
The man blinked rapidly. The girl, called Goddess, curled her lips into a cynical smile. I came because they said you were a priest, but you're not even worthy of being called a hero. You seem to have more brute strength than a typical human, but at best, this is a primitive civilization. Goddess! How could you say such? Thwack! The horned man's head flew into the air. A spray of blue blood burst from the stump of his neck. The terrified woman stumbled back in panic. And then the girl's gaze turned toward her. 1 star. The girl said coldly. Maybe 2 star if we're being generous. No way you'd even reach 3. No talent. This world's already dead. Better to discard it. Who are you? Doesn't look like you've even had an education. Are all the humans here this primitive? The girl before her was no ordinary being. The woman could only tremble uncontrollably. But of course, the current seeress knew exactly who this girl was. The Goddess of Mercy, CEO of Mobius Corp., the one who created Pick Me Up, and the head of the pantheon of all gods. In Townia, where Sirius's master Loki once stayed, this girl was called Tell. I just had a fun idea. Suddenly, her lips curled as if she'd discovered an amusing toy. If there's a jackpot, there has to be a dud, too. It wouldn't hurt to toss a few traps into the mix. The hero faction. Right, I'll make you humans. Let you vent all that humiliation you suffered under the White Oni. What? I'm offering you a chance for revenge. Honestly, I could make you monsters, too. But then the power gap would be too big, like a rabbit versus a lion. No game at all. The woman didn't understand the goddess's words. Game? What game? Back then, she knew nothing of the world. She just blinked, emerald eyes vacant. This'll be fun. I wonder what poor bastard of a master will end up with you. Who will take on these half-formed livestock and somehow drag them through hellish missions? I'm looking forward to it, aren't you? Sure. Right. I'll give you a little service. Even a trash account should have at least one high-ranking hero. Gotta give people a reason to spend money after all. Let's see, 4 star should be enough? With a bit of visual trickery on the status window, I should be able to fool someone. The woman took a step back. She couldn't understand the words, but she could tell this girl was plotting something sinister. Come here, my child. No. Why not? I'm offering you a chance to become a hero. 4 star. 4 star, I said. In other dimensions, only high-tier individuals ever get a rank like that. Stay away. Since when do livestock have the right to refuse? Her steps stopped. The girl approached leisurely, leaned close, and whispered, What's your name? 47? Huh? Your name's a number? Dad called me Cirrus. All right, Miss Cirrus. I assume you don't have a last name. I'll pick a cool one for you. How about Argentime? Has a nice ring to it, doesn't it? I'll set your starting class to Knight. It's a major class. Knight? Live by honor, die by honor. Sounds like something you'd like. Of course, you're still just half-baked trash. I had fun watching you grovel for your life like a worm. I wonder what unlucky master will end up with you. If it were me, I'd use you a few times and throw you away. Try not to get used for synthesis. Do your best. This is killing me. No one's going to want this account. Trash among trash. Vermin among vermin. What kind of master could possibly overcome all these conditions? If someone actually pulls it off, I'll personally call them God. That was always how the nightmare ended, with the girl's laughter. Cirrus opened her eyes. A familiar ceiling greeted her. Niflheim, floor 13. Her room. Again. She'd lost count of how many times. Ever since her master left, Cirrus had dreamed this nightmare every single night. Clatter. She grabbed the glass of water from the table beside her bed and drank it down. The cool liquid slid down her throat, bringing clarity to her mind.
Chapter 312. Cirrus tidied up her bed and changed into Niflheim's standard-issue black uniform. A lot of work today, too. Smack. She slapped her pallid cheek. Another day had begun. Here is the next batch. A stack of papers landed beside her as she worked at her desk. The delivery came from a red-haired fairy. Known as Nizel, this fairy had once managed Niflheim before Loki fell into the game world. Nizel had accompanied Cirrus when she left Niflheim to learn more about Pick Me Up, and even after returning to the waiting room, she remained by her side, assisting her with various tasks. You seem busier than ever these days. It's because the situation's changed. Cirrus replied bluntly and began reading through the documents. The contents were just as she had expected. Several of Niflheim's heroes were requesting discharge. Ever since that incident, everything's changed. After the headquarters on Server 1 collapsed and the gates between servers were sealed shut, to be more precise, after Loki, Niflheim's master, locked himself away in the Boundary Realm, the situation in the waiting room, which had once been a last bastion of survival, had shifted dramatically. Under the interim leadership of Sizel, Mobius' staff began the process of restoring the worlds. There was not a single one of the minor clashes one might expect from such a massive undertaking. As if they had all been waiting for this moment, within days, no, hours, thousands, even tens of thousands of dimensions were brought back online. Niflheim and Taunia were among those listed as restored. A discharge request. Cirrus dipped a quill into ink and signed her name in the designated box. Cirrus Argentheim, acting master of Niflheim. With her approval, the discharge applications were processed, and those heroes would soon return to their homelands through the dimensional gates. Niflheim, once a living hell, had changed. The weather was still bitterly cold, and the fog still hung thick all day long, but in this reborn world, the white Oni had gone extinct. That outcome had remained fixed after the corrected timeline was applied. The discharged heroes would return to unclaimed lands and begin anew. Cirrus? As she continued signing, Nizel fluttered down beside her. What about the master? She didn't answer. Her hand sped up as she flipped through the next set of papers. The Mobius staff say he's still alone in there. Cirrus didn't answer. There's also a rumor that the master lost his memories from when he was human. Maybe that's why he left us behind. I'm just worried. Shouldn't we try to confirm it? Stop. Cirrus froze, her right hand still holding the quill. A cold, flat voice fell from her lips. It was the master's wish. I have no right to undo that choice. Do you really mean that? You're just going to leave him like that? Cirrus bit down hard on her lip. Go after the master? Under what justification? She had failed. She had misjudged everything, blinded by despair, unable to read the situation properly. How shameless. Her master must have been disappointed in her. She couldn't imagine standing before him with her head held high. You mean you can't even face him? He must have been disappointed in me. I gave him every reason to be. She wished she could turn back time. If she could face her past self, she would have slapped herself hard enough to rattle her skull. Wake up. I forced the master to make a choice he shouldn't have had to make. She hadn't told him anything. She had forced her desired outcome onto him, driven purely by her own emotions. She never once stopped to think what the master truly wanted. I failed. It was no wonder the master left. He must have been sick of someone as selfish as her. Even if she did find a way to reach him now, he might only curse her and send her away. He might look at her with loathing and contempt. I had prepared myself for the master's hatred when I made the decision to send him back to Earth. But now,
That resolve was gone. Why did I ever think that was right? I hadn't been rational. Maybe it was because I realized everything that I had fought for the Master, for Niflheim, had become meaningless. When I had happened upon Alpha Zero and his adjutant and learned the truth, I'd lost sight of everything else. If I had stayed calm, if I'd handled things better, maybe this outcome could have been avoided. Maybe they could have laughed together again. Maybe they wouldn't have had to part like this. I'm such an idiot. I threw away something irreplaceable. And the price of that mistake was the Master's suffering and agony alone. No number of deaths could redeem it. However long it takes, until the Master returns, I will wait, and I will beg for forgiveness. Fortunately, Niflheim still had the resources to maintain the waiting room. The U-rank artifact Leviathan, Cirrus's sword, and Bifrost, the blade once wielded by Loki, imbued with his interference power. When her work was finished, Cirrus returned to her quarters. Nizel had suggested a meeting with other Floor 13 members, but she wasn't in the mood. Was I dreaming? Cirrus stared into the mirror. Reflected there was a blonde woman in a black uniform. That's not real. She was never a true knight, just some namesake figure thrown together by the executive Tell. She had risen on the back of Loki's strength, but once her master disappeared, she'd been unable to do anything. What are you exactly? Cirrus turned around. Leaning against the wall was a young man in an ash-gray coat, short, spiked gray hair and a frigid expression. Ridigen, third ranked on Floor 13. His emotionless eyes were fixed on her. Still at it, huh? It's been over a week since the Master left. Are you really planning to keep wasting time beating yourself up? I don't think you were made sub-master to slack off. When did you get here? Make a decision. We don't have time. Even now, the Master is suffering. Cirrus bowed her head. Ridigen clicked his tongue as he looked at her. Cirrus Argentheim. I know. Do you? You made a monumental mistake. I told you, tell the Master everything, let him decide. But what did you do? You pressured him. You forced him to go back. And if that didn't work, you were ready to draw your sword? I was so stunned I couldn't even laugh. His eyes turned ice cold. This is the result. The Master abandoned us. Cirrus shut her eyes. She had never intended to return to the home continent. She and her comrades had sworn, just before challenging Floor 80, with their lives on the line. The Master gave us everything, a new homeland, a miracle victory, even a reason to live. Don't throw that vow away like it's nothing. Shing! The hilt of the sword hanging from Ridigen's hip made a metallic sound as the blade was drawn halfway from its sheath.
Cirrus couldn't say anything. His words pierced her to the core. In that case, maybe that cold-eyed young man, already looking ahead, was better suited for her role than she was. Cirrus bit her lip and opened her mouth to speak. Ridigen, I'm not finished. Listen, to the end. Click. Ridigen sheathed his blade. I used to think about you a lot back in the day. His arms folded, he shifted his posture. A faint, ambiguous smile curved his lips. Why did the Master choose you to lead us? There were others far more suited. In terms of analysis, we had Yurnet. Without her, none of our operations would have been properly planned. Your command skills aren't particularly outstanding. You're not overwhelmingly strong enough to dominate us either. But the Master still chose you, without a second thought. Do you know why? Once again, Cirrus gave no answer. She just bowed her head in silence. This isn't your first failure. Ridigen continued. So what, one failure and you're ready to give up? Is that it, Cirrus? But don't give me excuses. You're the face of Niflheim. 20,000 heroes live under your command. Recognize the weight of your position. It's not something you just hand over when things get hard. He pulled something from inside his coat and tossed it. She caught it reflexively and immediately felt its weight. A scabbard, engraved with the image of roaring flame. It was Leviathan, the U-rank weapon her master had poured his heart into forging for her. I found it tossed aside. You're neglecting the weapon the Master gifted you.
Don't ever treat it so carelessly. Don't say you can't. If you feel responsible, then come up with a method that satisfies all of us. I don't want temporary fixes. I want a real way to save the master. That's the duty you bear. Saris took 2 steps back. A way to save the master? Redigian lowered his voice. If you, as Niflheim's submaster and captain of the 13th floor, give the order, then we're ready to charge through fire or hell itself. Don't let that resolve be for nothing. I'll place my trust in you. Redigian pushed off the wall. He cast one last glance at Saris before leaving the room. A way to save the master. Saris stood still, dazed, as her thoughts began to stir. Her master, Loki, who had gained power nearing the infinite, now fought alone in the boundary realm. In exchange for that power, he had lost nearly all his memories and humanity. Even if she stood right in front of him, he probably wouldn't recognize her. That was what scared her most. If he had lost everything, then what was the point in finding him? Would her voice even reach him? Would they even be able to talk? No, before even that, was it possible to get to where Loki was in the first place? If I could just make up for the mistake I made, if she, a failure, were given just one more chance... Master, Saris murmured. The despair that had consumed her moments ago was gone. It's my duty to find a way, and if none existed, she'd forge one. She grit her teeth. Blood welled in her gums, but she didn't care. Redigian's right. Just waiting didn't suit her. If something was needed, she would seize it. That was how Saris lived, as Loki's hero. If anyone knows how to save the master... Suddenly, a name flashed in her mind. Nissel! Right here, Saris-chan! Whoosh! A flash of flame, and the fairy appeared. Seeing Saris's face, Nissel thumped her flat chest with confidence. All right, say whatever you want. I'll make it happen. You got Alpha Zero's contact info, right? Alpha Zero? Ah, that pervy old geezer, you mean. He wanted your panties in exchange for information, didn't he? So what happened to those panties in the end? Shing! Levitane's blade slid halfway out of its sheath. No, it's a joke! It's a joke! It's a joke! Nissel flailed her hands in panic. Then her face straightened as she twirled her arms. Initiating remote comms. Beep, 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 click. In under 10 seconds, the recipient picked up. A voice echoed in Saris's mind. So, it's you. But it was a voice she didn't recognize at all. Saris scowled. Where's that senile old man? The sage has, entered eternal sleep. Eternal sleep? The sage? Saris-chan, panties, slurp. That pervert was a sage? Saris clenched her right hand into a fist. You're the adjutant who was with him? Yes, I introduced myself during our first meeting. I'm Sazel, acting chair of Mobius. I've been overseeing the Hero Repatriation Project. We've dispatched a few of our staff to Niflheim as well. No need to explain. I saw the official memo. Then, the fact that the esteemed submaster of Niflheim is contacting me personally must mean... Sazel paused briefly before continuing. I knew this day would come. I owe him my life. That man fulfilled my greatest wish. He is my savior. Then I'll get straight to the point. I need a way to save the master. Even something small will do. If you know anything, tell me. As you know, Master Loki has long since passed the critical threshold. By now, he's likely become a wraith. Restoring his identity is almost impossible. Almost. So you're not ruling it out. That means you do know something. Sazel didn't deny it. Tell me now. I need a helper. Someone who is close to Master Loki and who also holds significant power. Fortunately, I've identified a suitable candidate. Who is it? The former master of Taunia, Anything.
Chapter 313. Anything. Saris mouthed the unfamiliar name under her breath. It wasn't the first time she'd heard it. She had once investigated the waiting room where her master had lived. According to her findings, Anything had been a weak master, one who merely relied on Loki to get by. I should have researched more deeply. Saris knew the basic overview of Taunia, but she had never studied the four ancients or the imperial mythology tied to them. Maybe if she had, she could have stopped her master's change of heart. But what was done was done. Saris shook her head and spoke. That master was suspended, wasn't he? And the access server is already closed. Reinstating him is within my authority. Granting anything access again won't be difficult. I've got spare gems for that. Saris's eyes narrowed. How had most masters treated their heroes? Disposables, playthings, tools for entertainment, and nothing more. Except for rare cases like Loki, the average master never viewed their heroes as living beings. Still, I can't refuse. Han, who had once been your hero, now needed help. There was a high chance anything wouldn't even believe her, but not trying was worse. I'll handle the contact myself. Understood. I'll provide the link the moment this call ends. Thanks. Beep. The call ended. It's not a question of whether I can. It's something I must. Saris opened her eyes. Saris, that call just now. What time is it? 2:35 a.m. Summon Party 1. Nisale stared at her stunned. Then she nodded wildly. Got it. I'll bring them in right now. Poof. Nisale vanished in a puff of stardust. This is Niflheim's final mission. Resolve burned in Saris's emerald eyes. She pinned the red badge of authority to her black uniform, flung her cloak over her shoulders, and strapped Levitain to her waist. Let's go. By now the summons should have gone out to the other four. The rendezvous point, Niflheim's 13th floor, Garden of Mist. The place where Yrnet had once greeted Loki. Fresh air filled Saris's lungs. She stood at the center of the garden, having followed the dirt path to the clearing. A white wooden table still bore a teapot and cups, remnants of a tea session between Yrnet and Nisale, perhaps. Master, I have made my decision. I will accept my mistake. The reason the master kept me at his side. Just as Redigian had said, this wasn't her first failure. Even during her initial summoning and in many missions after that, she had made critical errors. But the important thing is what you do afterward. Never repeat the same mistake. Even in impossible situations, find a way forward. Never give up. That was the way of Saris Argentine. It was why she'd once been acknowledged by the ancient flame spirit that ruled Niflheim. Rustle. The wind blew, stirring the leaves. Saris stood silently in the center of the garden. I have something to say to all of you. To the empty garden, she spoke. First, I'm sorry. Because of my poor judgment, I made a grave mistake. Redigian was right. Driving the master away like that, it was my failure. There was no reply. Even so, Saris continued. Our homeland has been restored. The waiting room can now be maintained. But if the master is not here, then to me it means nothing. Shoof. Petals on the right flower bed rustled. Please, grant me one more chance. Her quiet voice echoed. Then the flower bed stirred again. What's with waking us up so suddenly? So this is why, huh? A girl with platinum hair burst out, clad in black uniform. Her feline eyes narrowed sharply. Serini, this really isn't like you. Naihaku. I'm too dumb to think deep, but I don't think you were wrong to care about the master. Maybe your method was a bit off. Naihaku Guestfell, a former spearwoman from Niflheim, once a daughter of a brothel that fought the White Oni. Her mother had had her tongue cut off from birth. Saris used to wonder why Naihaku spoke the way she did, but now she understood. Her speech was an homage to her mother's voice. Master's cold, but I think he's a good person. I don't want to say goodbye yet. We didn't even get to properly talk. Crack! Naihaku spun her hand in a full circle. A flash of lightning cracked, and a golden bow materialized in midair. Right? She smiled brightly and glanced around. Less than a day and here you are. Did you find a way? From beyond the dirt path, Redigian appeared. His cold gaze swept across Ceres's entire form. Big talk's meaningless. If you summoned us, you must have at least something in mind. Ceres took a deep breath and opened her mouth. There is an unconfirmed method. Unconfirmed? I can't guarantee success, but I think it's better than sitting around. Anything is better than doing nothing. Redigian leaned against the tree behind him. What's the chances it'll work? Have you identified specific steps? What's the plan, and how will we... That part will be mine to handle. A woman in a robe emerged from the mist beyond the flower beds. Her hood fell back, revealing pure white hair. I've been looking for options myself. If you really have a method, I'll take charge of verifying its feasibility. I've always done that, haven't I? Yernet Seed smiled gently at Ceres. I've made mistakes too. You don't need to shoulder all the blame. Everyone here, we're all guilty. Have something to say, Redigian? Well, I suppose I bear responsibility for not stopping it. Redigian smirked bitterly. Naihaku pumped her fist into the air. Then we all messed up. No need to blame anyone. Let's fix it. How are you going to fix it? I'll submit a full plan by tonight. Please review it. Got it. I'll draft an executable strategy. Yernet cleared her throat and turned to Ceres. By the way, does your plan involve anything? That's right. Then it's probably similar to what I've been thinking. It shouldn't take long to finalize. I will say this up front. If the plan fails, we don't know what will happen to us. Ceres lowered her eyes. If it were only her life on the line, she wouldn't hesitate. But this operation carries all of their lives. If anyone wants to return to the homeland, raise your hand. I won't say a word. We swore loyalty to the Master, yes, but you each have your own life. He would understand. Our own lives, huh? This is your last chance. Ceres looked around at her comrades. None of them moved. They only stared back at her, faces full of resolution. Our fate is sealed. All except one. By the way, where's our little brother gone off to? Naihaku asked, twirling a strand of her platinum hair. Only 4 stood in the garden. 1 person was missing. Muden, who went to Townia, has not responded. He was scheduled to return by today. Ceres glanced around. Nisale's summons should have reached Muden as well, and yet he hadn't shown up. So he's chosen his own path. Ceres let out a bitter smile. That man had said it to her more than once. If he disappeared one day, don't come looking for him. I've tried scanning again, but there's no sign of him here. This is bad. If even 1 person is missing... Ceres shook her head.
We have to respect his choice. If that's what he's decided, it's our job to let him go. Still, doesn't it feel off? He should at least say goodbye, don't you think? It's not like we'd force him to stay. I mean, we've spent so much time together, it's almost sickening. His personal decision, huh? Redigian clicked his tongue. A trace of regret flickered in his eyes. So that man finally reached his limit. Limit? What do you mean by that? Nyaku, I'll explain it to you later. The matter could wait. They could look into Muden's whereabouts tomorrow. Even if he wasn't here now, he might join them later. Anyway, shink. Ceres drew Leviathan. The crimson blade gleamed with a cold, ominous light. As of this moment, we are bound by a shared fate. The 4 of us gathered here will prioritize one goal above all else. And that goal is to save the Master. There was a mountain of problems they had to solve. Loki, who had lost his humanity, the fragments that infested the boundary, the fact that no path even existed to reach that place, what they could possibly do when they finally stood before him. One thing is certain. She wouldn't stop moving forward. Ceres held Leviathan out in front of her. Yes, it's been a while since I've done something like this. Shook. With a rasp like metal scraping against metal, his saber slid halfway from its sheath.
The curved silver blade crossed above Leviathan. I will not retreat any further. Yernit opened her book. The Naglfar Codex rested upon the drawn saber. Little brother's not coming? Too bad. Guess we'll have to go ahead without him for now. The golden refined bow gleamed from its place atop her shoulder. Saris looked at the three of them in turn. From today forward, we will hesitate no longer. Yes. Understood. Of course. In that case... Ding! A metallic ping rang out. Saris caught the object flying toward her face. This is... a steel badge, shimmering in violet. A ram is engraved at the center. Huh? Saris looked up. Down the dirt path leading into the garden, a young man was walking toward them with a spear strapped to his back. He stopped and glanced around at the four standing there, his mouth silent. Huh? That spear! That's little brother's weapon. Where'd you get that? Master left it to me. He entrusted it to my care. The young man replied flatly. What about little brother? Saris fixed her eyes on the young man before her. Mutin had bragged about him so often that even meeting him for the first time, she could tell immediately. That steady gaze, that weight beneath his quiet demeanor, he resembled the boy who had always seemed carefree but had carried a deep seriousness. Saris spoke. Are you ready? That spear isn't light. I've already made my resolution. If Mutin had truly passed ruin to this young man, then Saris had no right to refuse him. Even Nihaku, who had looked uncertain at first, now set her jaw firmly. Now was not the time to dwell on Mutin. Why are we gathered here? To save... The young man paused, and then corrected himself. To save my brother. He drew his spear and placed it atop Brionac. To save the master. Good. Saris smiled. To our king, victory! The voices of 5 warriors became one.
Chapter 314. The world does not move according to your will. Saris Argenthyme knew that better than anyone. Once, she had charged at her father's killer in a blind attempt at revenge and hadn't managed to leave so much as a scratch. That was her first failure. If all it took was desire, if emotion alone could decide victory, anyone could swing a sword. But the result was always the same. Ruin. I need a proper plan. Just like Master Loki had always done. She would need a clearly defined objective, a feasible route to success, and a thoroughly vetted method to reach it. After the garden assembly, the members of Floor 13 agreed to take a short rest period. Party 1 hadn't worked together in a long time. They needed to get back in sync and help their new member adjust to the group dynamic. While Yernit focused on research and preparing the plan, Saris stayed constantly on the move between the training grounds and operations office, barely resting. A week passed, and on one particular evening, Saris finished dressing and headed for the tactical chamber. Tonight, they would establish the foundational plan and tactical directives. The outline for saving the master would finally take shape. Click. Saris tightened her grip on Levitane's sheath. Ahead stood the chamber's massive double doors, engraved with the image of a black ram. As it was a confidential meeting, no senior staff other than Party 1 were invited. You're late. As she stepped inside, Rygion glanced up from the right side of the round table and offered a faint smile. The other members of Party 1 were already gathered: Yernit, Rygion, Nihaku, and Aaron, the one who had succeeded Mutin. Good, everyone's here. Saris walked to the center. The tactical chamber was where Loki had once laid out their pre-mission strategies, a sort of briefing room. At its center was a round table used for discussing operational outlines. We're ready, Yernit said, bowing slightly to Saris. She took her seat at the head of the table, her mind composed and steady. I trust the past week was meaningful for all of you. I believe none of you wasted it. Of course. Yes, ma'am. We're prepared.
Saris turned to Yernit. Yernit cleared her throat a couple of times before speaking. Let's begin by clarifying our objective, though I doubt it needs to be said. To save my brother. Brother, huh? To us he's the master, but either way, yes, the ultimate objective of this mission is to save the master. She continued. The first stage is to recover the master's memory. She raised her right hand and a hologram flickered to life above the table. It showed a man in a fur-lined cloak walking through a modern city street. Captured on Server 1's CCTV. Loki. The master is currently suffering from severe personality degradation and memory loss due to overfusion. At this point, he wouldn't even recognize us. He's probably in the boundary right now, fighting fragments without any self-awareness. Without self-awareness? Rygion tacked his fingers on the table. It's an Earth term, but essentially, Master Loki has become something like a program. He behaves like a machine following preset parameters. He destroys and absorbs nearby enemies indiscriminately. He neither sleeps, eats, or thinks. A thoughtless machine, then. Exactly. That's his current state. If we meet him, he'll most likely identify us as enemies and attack. Yernit bit her lip in frustration, but the emotion quickly faded and her usual composure returned. There are 3 primary challenges in this operation. First, how we reach the master. Second, how do we restore his humanity? Third, how do we relieve him of his burden? As you might expect, none of these are easy. The second and third I get, but isn't reaching him the easy part? I mean, even if he's buried deep in the boundary or whatever, couldn't little brother, Junior, just smash through with his spear? It's not that simple, Yernit said, shaking her head. She waved her hand and a miniature holographic city appeared above the table, pulsing with magical energy. Towering buildings and urban structures. This place... Saris narrowed her eyes. She'd seen this once before, back when she met Alpha Zero. The city was Eden, the core of Server 1 and home to Mobius headquarters. A perfect illusion recreated through projection magic. What's wrong with Server 1? Is there a problem? A major one. Yernit waved her hand again. Mist coiled around the model city and the landscape began to shift. What appeared was a ruined city. The pristine structures were half destroyed. Once straight roads and buildings rusted, crumbled, barely recognizable. Across the streets, blackish red clouds writhed and floated like parasites. Huh. The cloud formed due to the barrier erected nearby. Yernit pointed to the city center. There, a massive obsidian wall stood tall. It was the barrier Loki had erected to block Mobius from accessing the boundary. After analyzing the barrier's data, I found that the space-time inside the boundary had become so twisted that I couldn't even calculate it. That distortion spread to nearby Server 1. So the space itself became contaminated. Exactly. Wonderful. Rygion muttered, clearly annoyed. I understood what it meant. A large-scale infiltration is out of question. Only a few heroes with high resistance to the corruption can enter. No fleets, no support squads. And if Mobius's test subjects had gone rogue, they wouldn't tolerate intruders into their domain. Saris nodded herself. This is the first reason we need anything. If they could use the Master's interference power, they might temporarily neutralize the cloud. This mission will be carried out by a small elite force. We'll use a high-speed, self-defensible stealth airship, Sleipnir. If it's a small team, how many? Just us. No one else can resist the corruption. Saris answered Aaron's question. 5 then. Why, getting cold feet? Little brother wouldn't wimp out over something like this. No, Aaron smiled faintly.
Nahaku had taken to calling him Junior since his induction into the party. Understood. So it's just us breaking through Server 1 to reach where my brother is? Let me be clear. You can't breach the dimensional barrier with brute force or mana. Your karma attribute is indispensable. ... Let's move on, Yernit said, shifting topics.
The second challenge: how do we restore the master's humanity? Humanity, a word that defies simple definition. The cost of surpassing mortal limits. Great power comes with great consequences. Loki had gained overwhelming authority, but lost his identity and memories in return. Returning the master to his original state. Even if they reached him, if he couldn't understand their words, it would be meaningless. In his current state, he was no different from a corpse. What Ceres feared most had become reality. That's the key issue. Even if we get inside and find him, how exactly do we bring him back? Rygion asked, coolly. Yrnit took a slow, deep breath before speaking. We have to... Have to what? To kill him. Kill him? Rygion's eyes narrowed sharply. Yrnit's robe fluttered as she reached into her sleeve and pulled out a dagger. This is Mistletoe, a magical vaccine I crafted myself. ... The master has forgotten his memories, not lost them. He took in too much data at once, and a safety mechanism was triggered to protect his personality. If this dagger is driven into the master's data core, his heart, it will temporarily awaken his locked personality. Temporarily? It won't last long. We'll have to end things before it fades. Yrnit looked directly at Ceres. We're going to form a contract with the master once again. Ceres spoke. You all know this. Heroes and the master are inseparable. The reason we were summoned here, the reason the waiting room exists, the reason we were able to grow stronger through our missions, it's all because the master played this game. He was essentially our creator. If the master hadn't installed the game, Ceres would never have opened her eyes. Heroes and the master were the very reason Pick Me Up was created. We're connected. Just like when Loki fell into Mobius, and the members of the 13th floor sensed it instinctively. If so, we're going to connect even more deeply. ... We're going to share the burden the master is carrying, all of us, together. The other three's expressions turned blank. I'll turn not understand right away. That's why Sizzle called it absurd. The Chalice of Infinity, a unique trait possessed only by Loki. A trait that allowed him to endlessly synthesize. They would now share that trait with his heroes. With the master, who had already surpassed even divine beings, it was possible. Whether this operation succeeds or fails, I don't intend to come back. I'll bury my bones at the master's side. Bury your bones, did you say? I'll continue fighting by his side until he achieves victory. I know the condition is harsh. The war might never end. Thousands of years, tens of thousands, maybe even longer. But this is the only way to save the master. To remain at the master's side. To make sure he never forgets. To constantly remind him of his own existence. Alone in a place where no one else exists? No one could endure that. In the end, he'd let go of himself. But if there were 2, then 3, 4, 5, that fear would be halved, less than halved. An illogical method. Rygion let out a cold snort. Ceres couldn't argue. It wasn't wrong. You're saying his personality can be sustained through bonds? That's the kind of thing that only works in novels. Even if it were possible, you can't hold on forever. If we're together with the master, we'll have more than enough time. Yrnit's eyes sank low. I'm sure there are other methods, but they'll take time. Until then, until we lose ourselves, I'll find it. I'll bet everything I have. You're wanting me to trust you and throw myself into something uncertain? Yes. Ceres didn't hesitate. Clack. Rygion placed his saber hilt on the round table. Then let's proceed with that. Fighting alongside the master, huh? Sounds fun. Everyone's eyes turned to one person. The young man, eyes closed, his face hardened. Aaron Niobe finally opened his mouth. Forgive me for going off topic, but may I say something? Aaron opened his eyes. Just now, you said we'd have to kill the master once, but my brother... You mean he's unbelievably strong. Ceres finished his sentence. He's not just strong. My brother absorbed every divine being that was in Mobius. We can't even imagine what level he's reached now. I'm ready to fight, but I think we need to first evaluate our odds. True, the rookie's not wrong. Region nodded. The master has surpassed the divine. Even if we all fight together, I'm not sure we'd stand a chance. The pollution level inside the boundary is off the charts. The only one who can withstand it is Saris, who bears the seal of the Dharma. Our role is to clear the path for her. You're saying she'll face him alone? All eyes turned to Saris. Saris closed her eyes. She too knew what state Loki was in now. He had absorbed dozens of divine beings and countless shards and monsters. By now his power had surely transcended all limits. This is why Sizzle said it was impossible. Saris opened her eyes. No other plans, Yernit? Something with a higher chance of success? We're not changing the operation. This is the only way to save the master. I'll go in alone and face him. That's reckless. Rigion's gaze grew colder. Reckless, huh? He, having lost his self, wouldn't recognize her. He'd attack her on sight, trying to kill her. She'd have to subdue him and then drive the dagger into his heart. An absurd level of difficulty. If it were before she left Niflheim, if it were the version of her before Loki fell here, she might have looked for another method. But she hadn't just sat around. She had wandered through Mobius and at last fully inherited the myth passed down from Niflheim. If I wasn't confident... Whoosh! Saris's blonde hair turned crimson and blazed. I wouldn't have even brought it up.
Chapter 3:15. Once the general framework had been established, the meeting progressed swiftly. With Saris and Yernit leading the briefing, the members selected for the operation, the necessary supplies, tactical formations, and deployment structures were all finalized. The launch dates for the mission was set. The operation, now designated the Assault on Eden, would commence in 3 days. Yernat departed to service the airship that would be used in the operation, while Redigian and Nihaku headed to the training grounds to coordinate their moves together. Did the meeting end well? A terrace near the operations room. Saris slowly sipped the black tea that Nisol had poured for her. More or less. Beyond the terrace, the square was bustling with the heroes of Niflheim, coming and going. For the first time in a long while, a mobilization order had been issued. The heroes were equipping themselves with their respective weapons, preparing for battle. Saris reviewed the outline of the operation in her mind. The advance party was composed of the core members of Niflheim's first party: Saris, Yernit, Redigian, Aaron, and Nihaku. Their mission was to break through the corrupted dimension, Server 1, and then push forward through the barrier of the boundary realm where the Master resided. Fierce resistance from mutated corrupted beings was expected along the way. And then, Aaron would breach the barrier, opening a hole. Yernit would calculate the coordinates of the Master's location, and Saris would be the one to enter. The final objective: subdue the Master and plunge the dagger named Mistel into his heart. Then summon the others, and during the brief moment in which the Master regained his memory, persuade him so that all of them could bear the darkness he carried together, until the fighting ends. Saris let out a dry chuckle. If Loki had heard the plan, he would have flipped out and called it complete nonsense, because the odds were practically non-existent. Setting everything else aside, they would have to defeat the Master first, and he would be stronger than any foe Saris had ever faced. Have a cup too. Feels strange to drink alone. Saris picked up the teapot and poured black tea into an empty cup, sliding it over to Nisol along with the cookie. Then I won't hold back. Nisol emptied the teacup in one gulp and stuffed the cookie into her mouth. The little fairy's cheeks puffed out like a squirrel with acorns. I think we'll probably need your power in this battle, Saris said, watching Nisol chew noisily. Keheh, leave it to me. Are you not hurt or anything?
Nothing aching? Perfectly healthy. No way that's true. Saris gave a bitter smile. Niesel, the starting fairy of Niflheim, had once been just an ordinary unit, but now she had changed. Her hair had turned red. Every flap of her wings scattered sparks. Outwardly, not much seemed different, but within, she now carried a power that defied all reason. Power comes with a price. Saris knew it the moment she laid her eyes on Loki after his 7-star promotion, because she herself had experienced that cost firsthand. I couldn't endure it. If she had continued to harbor that power within her, she might have ended up just like Loki. But just before she broke, Niesel had taken that burden into herself. Niesel was now shouldering the penalty that came with Saris's strength. What we're doing is the same, carrying the weight together. So this is where you were. At the sound of a calm voice, Saris turned around. A young man in a neatly buttoned coat was approaching her. My name is Aaron. No need for introductions. Saris smiled faintly and pulled out the chair beside her. Aaron gave a polite nod and sat down. First time the two of us have spoken? We've both been busy. Here, drink up. Thank you. Niesel poured Aaron a cup of black tea. He said he once fought alongside the master. That must have been quite an experience. I thought she might like to feel it herself one day. Well, she'd be feeling it often enough from now on. My master used to say this, Saris always brings a new answer. You're giving me too much credit. Aaron drank his tea, his gaze wandering toward the square beyond the terrace, where numerous heroes were hauling supplies. So, we're going to fight alongside him, aren't we? Yeah, until every enemy of the master is burned to ash. Saris continued. You're not originally from Niflheim. No one's forcing you. No, I was planning to go if I had to alone. How admirable. But I worry. Is this really the way to save my brother? Saris looked at him. The man with the ordinary face pressed his lips shut. I think I know why you came to see me. You're not here to accuse me. You want a better answer. No, not at all. I just... Aaron's stern expression wavered. Saris glanced at him, then looked back toward the square. What do you think defines humanity? Aaron didn't respond. Memories of living? A clear self-awareness? Are those two things enough to define personhood? Saris had struck the core. The hellish training he had endured. Aaron had to forget himself again and again just to overcome that pain. Can we really say this will save him? Emotionally, he knew. There was no other answer, but he couldn't hold back from asking. I'm sorry, I must have troubled you. Aaron steeled his resolve. Once they departed from here, for the rest of his life, perhaps for a time many times longer than his training, he'd be locked in battle. No rest, no comfort. He'd have to fight with a blade in hand, abandoning all human desires. Enough. Aaron shook his head. Everyone had made their decision. He had no right to hesitate now. It would be nothing but disgraceful. Moiden was similar, but not quite the same. Sarah smiled. Moiden, despite his gruff exterior, was like an old man who had lived a long life. But this one, he was sensitive. Deeply so. This is as far as Sazel's plan goes, for the first party to share the master's burden. Saris brought the steaming tea to her lips. Even if we succeed, it won't change the master's condition much. If anything, being forced to live while aware of how long he has suffered would only make things worse. And her comrades would share in that suffering. Gulp. Each time Saris emptied her cup, Niesel poured her another. Already her 10th. Just being alive isn't the end.
Saris met Niesel's eyes briefly, then turned to Aaron and said, Humans aren't machines. We need rest, just like we're sitting here, talking and having tea. We need to laugh with comrades, sleep soundly in a warm bed, and sometimes we should be able to go see the ones we miss. Aaron, didn't you mention you have a younger sister back home? Yes, that's right. Then you gave up your family to be here. Saris's gaze softened. The reason I fought for the Master was because he treated the false version of me like a real human. What? 5 people aren't enough. Her voice dropped. That won't cut it. Bringing back the Master's memories would be meaningless. Aaron had been right. If he was to continue living in suffering, then what was the point of this mission? If a life with dignity couldn't be guaranteed, there was no reason to restore his humanity. Humanity. They couldn't end the Master's war. That conflict would continue far longer than the years Saris had lived. But they could let him rest, just like the Niflheim heroes who held small parties after missions. What do you mean? Saris extended her right hand. With a huff from her nostrils, Nisal passed her a small sheet of paper. Total number of troops requesting discharge? 8,429! Everyone else said they're staying. Saris checked the paper. The number matched. It was the tally Nisal had compiled over the past week. So 14,851 remain. So altogether, that's 14,816. It didn't seem Aaron had grasped what she meant. His eyes widened in confusion. They've all agreed to fight alongside the Master. Excuse me? Saris smiled faintly, am going to transplant all of Niflheim along with 15,000 troops into the realm where the Master is. Aaron blinked blankly. With 15,000, we can split the force into rotations. Our Niflheim is the strongest fortress there is. If we pair up 13th Floor members and rotate shifts, we can secure up to 16 hours of rest per day. We're building a kingdom in that empty land. That's the true goal of the Eden Assault operation. We're the advance team. So, does that clear up your doubts? Is that really possible? It is. That's why we brought anything into the mission. Saris downed her 13th cup of black tea. They would store Niflheim's waiting room data on anything's smartphone and copy it into the Master's realm. 2 days ago, they'd managed to make contact with anything, Loki's master. Saris hadn't even given a full explanation, only that she needed help. Anything responded immediately. She said she would do anything to help Han. So the agreement was made quickly, and Bifrost, Loki's sword, was selected as the data transfer medium. Thus, the final phase of the operation is subdue the Master, restore his consciousness, and forge a new contract with him. Then, using Bifrost, summon Niflheim and build an advanced fortress in a corner of the boundary realm for the Master and his army. She's really going that far. Sazel had called the plan absurd, but in the end, she'd promised to assist with the procedures required to execute it. All conditions are in place. Oops! It's all gone! Nisal shook the teapot. It seemed the tea had been completely emptied at some point. Aaron's voice trembled. With a sigh, he finally set his teacup down. My master was right. It was still only a concept. To make it real would take immense effort. Saris brushed off the hem of her uniform and rose to her feet. Can I trust you? Aaron's voice was firm. There was no more hesitation in his eyes. Of course. Behind Saris, Nisal fluttered her wings. Saris lightly patted Aaron's shoulder and stepped off toward the edge of the terrace.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe, comment, and like the video. Have a suggestion? Let me know in the comments.